is up, everybody? Eagles get the W 15-12. Unbelievable comeback win for the Birds. We're breaking down reaction, takeaways, player of the game, Eagles game in 3 words or less. I'm losing my voice. Joining us, he is Shane Heff at Shane Heff NFL. What's up, Shane?
Man, this is just like Monday night, where if the last minute of this game goes differently, you have an entirely different feeling right now. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good right now. 2-1. Let's go.
Let's go. Also joining us for the first time, he is the Johnny Page, the best Eagles follow there is on X. What's up, Johnny?
Yeah, I just realized how loud you are. My mic was way too loud there at the start, which is now, I think I'm going to have to try and recover. And also, I would be single if I spoke that loudly, seeing as UK time, my wife is currently sleeping. If I did that, might be the first ever live post-game show where you see a woman come in and slap a podcast producer, because that was incredibly loud. So I'm loving it. Bringing the energy.
All right, man. Guys, if you're watching this live, please be sure to subscribe. Please be sure to comment. We've got comments flowing. This show's about you. We're going to react to this. Last week was a therapy session. This week is also a little therapy session because I've got a lot of problems with this win, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Shane, quick reaction to the win. Go.
I think this win is equally as shocking as the loss on Monday Night Football. You finally get the lead, then the defense gives up the touchdown, which there will be no defense blaming. The defense played incredible. You're going to give up a touchdown at some point in a game. But then for Jaylen Herz and the offense to get the ball back, it looks terrible, right? You complete a 4-yard pass and burn 30 seconds trying to get up to the line to complete a 1-yard pass. You get the penalty. And then Dallas Goedert with the play of the game, obviously, the long touchdown run sets a career high in yards and receptions, and you punch it in, and then the defense holds. It feels like I was on a roller coaster all afternoon, and I'm equally as shocked now as I was Monday night when the Eagles lost.
What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to talk about anything English, don't worry. But I watched my other sporting franchise, shall we say, the Americans, literally as the Eagles game was going on.
Arsenal.
So my stress levels. Yeah, anyone who knows anything about soccer, shall I say, or real football, just to annoy the commenters there. I was literally watching Arsenal at 6:30, so my time as this game is going on, and it was one of the most stressful games I've ever watched. So I think today's been bad for my health, and I really needed that win. I needed that win badly because it was a tough 4 or 5 hours leading up, and if they had lost that at the end, and I'd watched what had happened earlier on to my other team, that would have been a disgusting Sunday. So, that has saved my day. I am now extremely happy, as you can probably tell by the constant smiling. But yeah, I needed that one badly.
Johnny, I just want to go on the record and say it's very brave of you, having previously stated that you slept through the Eagles games in week 1 and 2, to come on the first ever post-game show here on the Eagles Pinpull Network and call soccer the real football. That's brave. It's a choice. Well,
it's an interesting. It's mainly just so you guys understand what I mean when I can't say soccer, Shane. I'm 30 years old nearly. I've been saying football my whole life. It's just both football. There's British football and there's American football. So I'm just saying soccer for all of our lovely listeners. But yeah, I can't say that word. It feels incredibly strange.
Just a roller coaster of emotions kind of game for the Birds. Quick reaction. I have major concerns, of course, as I always do. Jaylen Hurts' performance, decision-making, the situational play calling. On the halftime show, I wanted more Saquon. We got it. Bang, bang, bang. 3 drives. He had 11 touches for 127 yards. He had 1 carry the rest of the game through the 4th quarter. And I was just flipping the table. Outside of that, they got it done. Big picture-wise, the defensive line got it done, and that was one of the biggest storylines, at least question marks for me. Brandon Graham replacing Bryce Huff was one of the biggest changing moments for this game. I don't know what Bryce Huff's snap count is going to look like in a few hours when that's released, but I feel like he played and then he was out. And then he was in and out the rest of the game. And Brandon Graham making that pressure to force the interception by Reed freaking Blankenship. What a moment. What a moment for the Birds. There's so much to dissect in this one, guys. Thank you, everyone, for the comments. Those interior D linemen, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Thomas Booker almost got a pick. Jordan Davis had some moments. The defensive line got home this week. And I thought that was the biggest storyline. I have some question marks about this offense, but the defense bailing out the offense over and over, bailing out the coaching over and over and over again is the storyline of this game, in my opinion. I agree, Shane. I cannot believe they won this one. I did not expect them to score that at the end. When Dallas Goedert hit that crosser and just kept rolling, it felt like Joe Jaravicious in some respect, which is ironic considering they play the Bucks next week. He just kept running. It was amazing. Any other thoughts, Shane, before we roll on to general takes about the offense?
Man, I'm so excited the Eagles won this game, and at the same time, you're a little let down because Nick Sirianni survives now. Because Nick Sirianni is a mess. Like I tweeted at halftime. I said that Nick Sirianni is an arrogant moron that is costing the Eagles games week over week. He should have been fired last season. He should have been fired last week. He should be fired at halftime. And somebody responded to me right after the game and was like, care to comment now? And I was like, it all still stands. Like, this game was mismanaged almost at every opportunity. And you extend it to the Saints side too. Like, the Saints mismanaged so many opportunities in this game. This game was almost like a picture perfect how not to manage games on fourth down from both sides. That has got to get better for the Eagles. So I guess I'll leave that as a big picture takeaway. And I've got lots of offensive things to talk about when we get there, but big picture, the game management's still a disaster for the Eagles.
It really is. Like, this felt like a game the Eagles could have been at least like 15-3 in the first half, and then way more in the second, obviously. Johnny, any other takeaways before we roll into some offensive takes?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have to bring some positivity because Shane feels like his anti-Sirianni-ness has just gone through the roof today. I must admit, like, when I'm watching the game live, I struggle with like the analytic sides of whether to go for it or when to not go for it. Gut feel, it felt like a couple of them were way off. Like the 4th and 1 to me felt like the really obvious one because even if they make it, they haven't got enough time to really score there. So that felt like the absolute disaster. The rest of it, I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I think a couple of those plays where I think it's easy to sort of kill Sirianni after this game, and I felt the same lie. But I must admit, I haven't like gone back and looked at whether they should have gone for them or not. But the 4th and 1 is the one that, yeah, if we'd lost that game, I would have been in a very different mood because that one really didn't make any sense to me. But the thing is, Sirianni's normally been quite good at that stuff, so I don't know. Maybe he's having a terrible year, but yeah, right now it's hard to be too positive about the Eagles head coach. But I think you can be positive about a ton of other things in this game.
Absolutely.
So there we go.
All right, let's get into our takes on the offense, leading off with Jaylen Herz. Like, in general, I think they had like 6. They had, I think the Eagles were in the Saints territory like 6 times and only had 7 points from out of that. Like, Johnny, can you fact check that? But like, they kept moving the chains, getting into Saints territory and not getting points on the board. That was the storyline of the game. It was a very frustrating offense, obviously, in the first half. And then in the second half, they finally committed to the run. They were finally winning in the trenches and then abandoned the run a little bit. But let's start off with Jaylen Herz, 29 of 38 for 311 yards, a pick. He did have a fumble. He did have 25 yards on the ground, but I feel like most of that was in the first half. Shane, quick reaction to Jaylen Herz.
Yeah, they were in Saints territory 5 times going into the fourth quarter and had 0 points to show for it.
It's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I thought Jaylen Herz played really well today. We spoke at the halftime show about the interception. I'm going to rehash here because not everybody catches the halftime show, but I don't put that on Jaylen Herz. I thought Greg Olsen talked about that really well. That's a ball you're throwing a little bit blind, trusting your receiver to break across the face of that safety. That's just not Devonte Smith's strength. Like AJ Brown catches that or breaks it up. I think that's not a spot that you want to put Devonte Smith in. Like with AJ Brown out, that's a place you want Dallas Goedert or Johnny Wilson, although Johnny Wilson had a key drop on that last drive, so maybe not him, but I don't think that interception I would put on him. The fumble's bad. Like getting out of the pocket, you got to have both hands on the ball. I thought the next drive he corrects that. He scrambles, and for the rest of the game, as he was making moves out of the pocket, you saw both hands on the ball. That needs to happen consistently. But I thought Hertz played well. There's still an element of holding the ball a long time. I think partially that's always going to be there, and partially you're down AJ Brown, and later down Jaylen Hertz, down Devonte Smith as well. And it's just not having trust in your wide receiver 3, 4, 5 or your tight end 2 as much. And so I think there's a little bit of that's natural, a little bit of it that's always going to be Hertz's tendency. But overall, I think he played really well today.
I was very critical of Jaylen Herz during the halftime show. I will say from last week to this week, I think we are seeing some progress in the middle area of the field. We didn't even get to Dallas Goedert yet, but even to Devonte Smith, I feel like Jaylen Herz is starting to show a lot of progress with utilizing between the hashes. Johnny, what was your take on Hertz?
Yeah, I thought he played really well, actually. It was a weird Hertz game. Like, I don't know, Hertz has this thing this year where even when he plays well, you feel like there's so many holes to sort of you can nitpick about. Like, the fumble was atrocious, and you can't make any excuses about that. It wasn't like he's hit blindsided, like he's leaving the pocket. You have to have 2 hands on the ball. That's just like basic. That's fundamentals. That's the boring stuff that we don't really want to talk about. The interception, I'd have to see the all-22. Like, it looked to me like a risky throw, but I think Hertz is a pretty aggressive quarterback. And I've always, if I'm consistent in my analysis, I've always wanted QBs that take risks more than QBs that play it safe. So I can't kill him for that. But I mean, look at the numbers, and the ball doesn't hit the ground a lot in this Kellen Moore offense the last few weeks. It feels like they're pretty accurate. It feels like guys are open. The Eagles receiving core actually isn't brilliant. I mean, I know, like, obviously when AJ Brown's there, it's amazing. But when he goes down, I'm a little bit lower on Devonte Smith as like a pure one. As some people, I think he's fine in that role, but I think he is better suited as a receiver too. They don't really have a lot else. Like, Dotson's getting up to speed. So all of a sudden, especially when Smith goes out, it's a pretty average receiving core. And I think the best thing I can say about Hertz after 3 weeks is he looks in command of the offense. And my worry was, can he actually run a Kellen Moore offense? Like, is it going to work? Are they going to mesh? No pun intended, because we're going to get to mesh later on, by the way. But they did big time. Like, he looks like he's in control of the offense. And I think things are going to get better. I think the mistakes will come down, and I think maybe the upside will go up when AJ Brown gets back. So overall, I know people are going to be critical and moan a little bit about Hertz, and I think rightly so, because the mistakes the last couple of weeks have been unlike him. But I've seen what I want to see. Early on, it looks like an offense that suits him and his skill set. And I think as they iron out some of these problems, I feel pretty good about them going forward. You look at some of the QB play around the league as well. I feel like the Eagles are in a pretty good position where Hertz has got a really high floor, and I'm hoping to see that ceiling just raise a little bit towards the other end of the season.
I am not on the apology tour. I am not nearly as high as you guys on Jaylen Hertz from this one. The decision making, the situational play calling, the refusal to utilize Saquon in key areas of the game, especially towards the red zone. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Besides the design runs, which have looked excellent, there's been some motion, and he's looked very good against the blitz compared to years past. I'm not a believer just yet. I think the flashes are there for sure, but I do think there are real reasons to be concerned. I still think he's struggling to get the ball out fast in a Kellen Moore offense. I still think he doesn't go through his progressions as well. Obviously, he bails way too much. So for me, this was not a great Jaylen Hertz game, despite the 300-plus yards passing. I think the defense won this one. That's just my take, especially Saquon on those few possessions. And that was my first half take. It wasn't that Jaylen Hertz was awful. It was more so that they just need to get out of his own way. You know what I mean? Like, he kept shooting this team in the foot, and just give it to your obviously best player in Saquon Barkley, who we can go to next, who was sensational. 17 carries, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.6 yards. There was a stretch in the second half where he had 11 touches for 127 yards. He was unstoppable. Looks like a guy 2 years ago. Barkley is really the engine of this offense in a lot of ways. And it's amazing considering how many offensive linemen the Eagles lost in this one with Lane and Mekhi Becton and so forth. credit, first of all, to the depth of the Eagles offensive line. And second of all, Saquon is the truth. I'll throw it to you, Johnny. What are your thoughts on Saquon?
Yeah, he looked incredible from week one this year. Like, it was just obvious. I watched a lot of Saquon because I watched a lot of running backs. And he wasn't as good with the Giants the last couple of years as he is this year. Like, whatever they've done off-season wise, whatever injuries he's had. I know it's very easy to say the offensive line's better, which makes him look better, but that's sort of easy. Like, I know there's those next-gen stats going on already saying that he's faster than he has been, but it is true. Like, he clearly looks better. I take it we're going to get to the offensive line separately. If not, can we? Because good. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about them. My only criticism with Saquon Barkley this week was nothing to do with him. I know I'm the run the ball guy, but I think they could have run the ball more. I think going back to the season, I was a big believer that this wouldn't be a running back by committee, and Gainwell and Shipley had no carries today, which is pretty incredible. And to be honest, it feels like they only come in when Barkley needs a play to go out rather than they actually want them in on a specific play. I thought Barkley was good in pass protection as well. There were times in pass pro that he looked really good. He's just like, there's not many running backs in the league that can do everything. I think when it was the 2-point play, which was probably the biggest play of the game, because if the Eagles don't get that 2-point conversion at the end, I think it could be a very different game with the Saints. Maybe going down the field, knowing a field goal could win it. And the way they can just call, like, there we go, inside zone on the 2, go, with 2 backup offensive linemen, because Barkley doesn't just do the shifty stuff. He's also like one of the most powerful running backs in the world. I was praying the Eagles ran that play. I'm pretty sure they ran the same play on their touchdown on 1st and goal and on the 2-point conversion. It looked like a sort of zone running play of a tight end coming across the formation as well. I've only watched it once or twice, but it was basically just like, go on, Saquon, like, you can do it. The offensive line will give you something and you can pound it in there. I still think there's more to come. I think in the receiving game, there's stuff that Kellen Moore should be able to do with him. But yeah, like EPA this week, Saquon Barkley had 0.34 total or per rush, which is pretty insane. And Kamara was negative 4.2. So that's a big difference. And running the ball matters. Like, the way the league is now, the Eagles have got possibly the best running back in the league this year. And that's going to be a seriously helpful weapon this year.
This is a great comment by Marshawn. Nick hugged Saquon after his touchdown. Oh, man. Saving his job. I love that comment. Shane, any thoughts on Saquon and the run game?
Yeah, well, first I need to jump back to Jaylen Herz because I think you and Chad are being way too critical. Jaylen Herz had a positive 9.5% completion percentage over expectation. This was a guy playing without his wide receiver 1, without his right guard and his right tackle, which we'll get to, without his wide receiver 2 for a decent portion of the second half, and with some questionable decision-making in whether to go for it or not situations, still played well. Like, we can say he should have put up more than 15 points. Well, he's not the one making some of those decisions to go or not. We can say, I saw somebody say he should have 300 yards isn't enough. He should have thrown for 500 yards. The Saints defense is incredibly good. And again, he was missing 4 key starters on offense. The fumble's frustrating, but Hertz played really well in this game, in my opinion. On to Saquon Barkley, though. Saquon Barkley played really, really well in this game. NextGen Stats said that of his 147 yards, 87 of them were rushing yards over expectations. He also hit 21.66 miles per hour on the GPS on his long touchdown run, which is the second fastest time clocked by a ball carrier this season, behind only Nico Collins. Man, Saquon Barkley is so good. My fear going into, after last week was this guy's going to get run into the ground and not be the same player at the end of the season because he's got so many touches. And again, I mean, Kenny Gainwell doesn't have a carry in this game, and we'll monitor that as we go along. But if they can get this explosive version of Saquon down the stretch, this offense can be so good, especially as the rest of it starts to come together and you get more comfortable in the system. So I thought Saquon was really good in this game. It's tempting to want him to carry the ball 30 times a game, but I also don't want that because I want him to be fresh in January. So I guess it goes both ways.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Guys, we're getting a lot of great comments. Next week, Jaylen has 5 turnovers. It was an awful route by Devonte. I don't blame the interception to Jaylen Herz on that pick. It's the process, right? Like, there's been a lot of issues with the Eagles' process over these last couple weeks, and it's been killing me. And I agree, Shane, like probably Jaylen Herz doesn't have a lot to do with some of these play calling and things like that, but how long has he been a Philadelphia Eagle? Like, there's got to be part of that, right? There's got to be some feel.
For what?
Like, just the overall decision making, just the overall like abandoning the run, things like that. So like,
well, sure, but Hertz isn't the one calling those plays. I mean, Hertz isn't the one that called, what was it, 42 dropbacks in this game to 17 Barkley carries. He's not calling that. So yeah, I mean, there's some quibbles with how some of the games called, especially again down AJ Brown, and why you're not leaning on Saquon a little more. But I don't put those things on Hertz, and we can talk decision making on Hertz, and I've been critical of that, especially with his week 1 interceptions. I don't really fault the interception in this game on his decision making. I just don't really put that one on him.
Yeah, I do think it's fair to point out that we talk a lot about the same things over and over and over again, which is the decision making in crucial moments of the game, whether that's play calling or Jaylen Hertz. Let's get to receiving. Let's get to receiving. My God, guys were falling like rocks. But leading off, Dallas Goedert, 10 receptions for 170 yards. I think this is the game we wanted to see from him last week. Not necessarily 170 yards, you know what I mean? But, like, my goodness, he was fantastic from start to finish, really. Shane, what are your thoughts on the receiving group and especially Dallas Goedert?
That one-handed catch that Dallas Goedert made,
that was awesome.
He just casually pulled that in and made it look so easy. And I could tell on the broadcast it was a one-handed catch, but I didn't even think they were going to come back to it because I didn't even know if they noticed, and they did. But, man, he's so good at that one-handed catch. We've seen him make that so many times. Incredible performance by Goedert. I think they said 10 catches and 170 yards were both career highs for him. I thought Devonte Smith was having a good game until his injury. And then, I mean, man, you've got Paris Campbell, Kenny Gainwell is out there. That one pass they threw to Britton Covey was nice. He was kind of the hot on that play, and you get it to him in space and make a guy miss. Like, that's a good usage for Britton Covey. Like, preferably you don't have to have him on the field a lot. If you do have to, that's great. It's basically like a punt return. You're giving him 8 yards of open space to make a guy miss. Johnny Wilson's tough. Like, that drop on the last drive, that's a catch he needs to make. It hit him in the hands. Yeah. He's a really good blocker theoretically, but in practice, it's just the most obvious holding penalties every time he's out there. So I would like to see him clean that up because I think he could be really useful as a blocker on those screens, as a jump ball guy down the sideline, but he's got to clean those things up. But I mean, you cobble together what you can, and it's enough. Shout out to Dallas Goedert for really carrying the receivers in this one with all the injuries.
Johnny?
Yeah, Goedert had a ridiculously good game, and I was a little bit critical of Goedert last week. I don't think he hasn't moved that well this year. I'm convinced on the All-22, the Eagles smashed mesh like 15 times in this game against man coverage, and I'm pretty sure they always lined up Dallas Goedert on the single side of 3, and when they ran like a sort of mesh drive concept with like all 3 guys from the other side coming across the formation, and I'm pretty sure the Saints man coverage couldn't handle it, and that's really good game planning if so. I've never seen Dallas Goedert so wide open so many times. Yeah, he played really, really well, and credit him because his blocking looked really good as well. They used him as a puller quite a lot in the run game, it looked to me, and I think he basically had the game of the year by 8 mile. I am officially a little bit terrified of the Eagles receiving core behind Devonte Smith at this point. I sort of knew Jahan Dotson would take time to get up to speed, but he's really not playing at the moment. I think Hurst does have a thing with trusting certain guys, and I think without seeing that again, the film again, maybe Dotson's getting open a bit more, but I haven't noticed him. Johnny Wilson, Jesus Christ, that man, if that man gets to have a holding penalty, like that is your job. You are like huge. You do not need to hold a defensive back. That he drove me a little bit insane, but then he also had really good yards after the catch. But yeah, I am a little bit terrified, especially if Covey's out, because give Covey credit. He's become like a reasonably good, like Swiss Army knife, sort of throw him a few bubble screens in the flat, etc. He's become quite good at that stuff. So I don't know how bad his injury is meant to be. I also hated seeing Cooper DeJean returning punts just because it feels weird seeing a safety returning punts or cornerback, whatever you want to call them. But that felt a little bit strange. But yeah, they, as I think Shane said it well, they sort of just about got through today. But I think long term, they're going to need more from that group, or it's going to really, really be a heavy dose of the running game. But I think they need a little bit more from Dotson maybe Johnny Wilson or someone else to step up. Because who knows? I mean, Devonte Smith concussion, that could be a next week out as well. If that is both of them out, that's going to be really interesting to see how they game plan, because I don't think every team is going to get done by mesh 10 times after seeing today's film.
Devonte, I think, had one catch in the first half. Is that correct?
I am not sure on that.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
You ask me stuff like this enough on post game. I always kick myself for not screenshotting the box score at halftime, but I always forget.
Because I feel like he was terrific in that second half. But was that hit? What was your take on the hit of Devonte Smith? Because I can't believe there was not enough whistles on that play. It just felt like an unnecessary hit, and there was no flag. Anybody have a take on that?
I mean, it should have. The whistle should have been blown. Devonte Smith was clearly in the grasp of two guys being pushed backwards. B, it's a dirty hit. I mean, he launched himself at the back of a guy's head, led with his helmet. Like, it may not have been intentionally. It might have been trying to hit him in the back and he starts to fall, and so it gets in the head. But if a quarterback is delivering a pass, if you hit him and your helmet touches his helmet, that's a flag. That should have been a flag. In college football, they would have reviewed that for targeting and ejected him from the game. I thought that was horribly mismanaged by the officials. It should have never been there. The whistle should have been blown long before that happened.
What was worse?
I was sorry. Yeah.
That one?
I have no idea what the officials. Sorry, we're going to talk across each other at the same time, with the joys of live. I have no idea what the officials are doing. That is like one of those plays where, like, the whole point of calling a play dead is so you don't get hit like that. He's literally running across the middle of the field with defensive linemen about to go into him from the opposite side. He's looking like, well, I've got no idea. And I also didn't like the guy sort of diving on the ball afterwards, but seemingly doing it in a sort of relatively aggressive way when the whistle had clearly gone, so he was never going to land on the ball. The Saints in general, pretty dirty team, have been for a while. Another reason why I enjoyed that game a lot. Yeah.
That play where Trevor Penning drove Darius Slay into the ground like 5 seconds after the fact, and then targeted Keely Ringo on the next play for a huge first down. I was just, that's the Saints for you. That I tweeted that out as well. That was brutal.
Also, on that play, what is Keely Ringo the best at, Dibes?
Press.
So if you're going to bring him in cold off the bench and you know he's probably going to get targeted, why are you playing him? Just let him go press the guy and help him over the top. I would have called that one a little differently, but hindsight.
Totally fair. The block on Slay should be suspended. I blame the rest for the late hit. Devonte was clearly on the ground. The whistle should have been blown. Penning was just malicious. Taking out Slay was definitely strategic. Is there still a bounty on the Saints defense? Let's go into the Eagles offensive line. My goodness. Lane out, Mekhi Becton out, Fred Johnson in. I give them a lot of credit because they were not early. They were not late injuries. The Eagles were rotating a lot of guys, moving a lot of guys. And overall, I thought the Eagles offensive line in big moments of this game, especially in the second half, setting the tone, was a major difference in this game. Shane, what are your thoughts on the offensive line?
It's rough when you lose an offensive lineman mid-game. It's really rough when you lose two guys that play next to each other in Mekhi Becton and Lane Johnson. I thought Tyler Steen and Fred Johnson played so well, especially considering expectations. I mean, Tyler Steen was like never a thought in training camp to beat out Mekhi Becton. I thought he came in and played well. I thought Fred Johnson played really well. I was really impressed with what those guys were able to do up front. And unfortunately, you may need them to do it again because I don't know what's going on with Mekhi Becton's hand. I do know they acted like on the broadcast Lane Johnson had been throwing up, like he was sick or something. But then when they said he was being evaluated for a concussion, I'm pretty certain if you're vomiting as a concussion symptom, you're automatically out the next week. So I really don't expect that Lane Johnson will play next week. I don't know what the deal is going to be with Mekhi Becton. You might need these guys to both suit up again and start next week against the Buccaneers. So hopefully they're up to it again. But I thought they did really well in this game.
Johnny?
Yeah, I thought I'll talk about those two in a second. I want to give a bit of a shout out as well too. I thought Cam Jurgens looks really good, and I haven't got to the all 22 as I said, but I thought he had some really nice blocks and some zone run plays. I feel like, I mean, I was all on Cam Jurgens' hype. I have been for a long time, and the Eagles are sort of just like, oh yeah, Jason Kelsey's not there, which is sort of incredible, but we're not really talking about it. Like, center's not a talking point. There are a lot of talking points for this team, and we're just like moving on, like not a great deal's changed, which is pretty remarkable. I give myself a massive pat on the back because I really liked Fred Johnson in preseason and tweeted way too many times about Fred Johnson. And he was like a big focus of my preseason Patriots article was him and Trevor Keegan. Like he looked good. He looked really good. There were plays when Jaylen Herz was standing back there and had 4 or 5 seconds in the pocket and like they were getting nowhere. Credit to Steen as well. He probably was a little bit annoyed that he got beaten up or beaten out, I should say, by Mekhi Becton for that job, and he could have sulked about it, and he came in and played well. I know it's too early to talk about next week, but it is interesting if they're both out, if one of them's out, how they decide to do that. Whether Becton goes back to tackle, because you could consider it. But I think it's incredible because teams don't have depth around the offensive line. It's probably the biggest league-wide problem this year with offense, and the Eagles can just bring in 2 backups that they basically got from nowhere. And like Jeff Stoutland is just incredible. I think people forget Tyler Steen was not even a guard. He was a tackle, but they've moved to right guard, never played there his whole life. Fred Johnson, was he Cincinnati's practice squad or was he late round pick from Bengals or whatever? And he looked good in the preseason and he looked good today. And run blocking, pass blocking, I think Saquon Barkley's big touchdown run, I'm pretty sure when we watch it back, Jurgens and Dickerson had some great blocks. Like, yeah, it's hard to play offensive line in this league, and I think it's really hard to lose players early on in games because it's a position that's all about relationships. And for 2 players to come in that easily, it felt sort of pretty seamless. Like it wasn't a talking point at all. I didn't see the Eagles like chipping out there. I didn't see them giving like, it wasn't like Fred Johnson was an instant liability and a time was having to stay into block. That wasn't the case. He was just like left alone out there, as the Eagles tackles always are. And he seemed to hold up really well. So, yeah, I'm going to give a massive, massive shout out to Johnson in particular.
Shout out to Grant Calcaterra for taking that block. Got just straight pancaked on that run by Saquon Barkley. But, yeah, I mean, that was a major question mark coming into this, like backup tackle, the interior offensive line. And I think they have passed so many grades so far through 3 games. It's been terrific. That's why I wanted this win so bad, because of all the injuries and things like that, concussions. Like that's why it was so vital to get out of New Orleans with the W. Smitty says we pulled a rabbit out of the hat today. There's a lot to clean up, but a win is a win. Good stuff. Let's get to the defense because they were the star of the game without a doubt. Leading off with, I think, Eagles legend Brandon Graham replacing Bryce Huff in this one. We saw a lot more 5-man fronts in this one, and that was really the difference, I thought, in a big way, considering the Saints' offense and Alvin Kamara and their zone rushing attack and holding Kamara to just 87 yards on 26 touches on the ground, given everything we saw in the previous weeks. Just major shout out to this Eagles defensive line and overall front 7 for really just start to finish playing a phenomenal game, bailing out the offense over and over and over again. Johnny, lead us off, man. Where do you want to go with the defense?
I could go everywhere. This was awesome. Firstly, for the Saints, having one of the best offensive minds in the game, what the hell were they doing with their run game today? They made it easy for the Eagles. Like, credit Fangio, but I didn't really get to see whether the Eagles were going to adjust or not because the Saints just kept coming out in heavy personnel. So I guess credit the Eagles for playing like 5-man fronts and even occasional 6-man fronts, but they also would sort of handed it on the plate because the Saints just kept coming out and running from heavy personnel. Like if the Saints had, it's funny how NFL coaches are so like almost arrogant in their own beliefs, where if I was planning an offensive game plan after watching the Eagles last week, I'd be in 3 wide receiver sets running outside zone from under center every single play and just saying, go on and do it. I think the difference is they didn't have an offensive guard who could cut block Zach Bourne because that was what did it last week. I thought the defensive line were awesome. I thought the 5-man front just works better for this defense. It didn't seem to limit them in pass coverage very much. Bryce Huff, Brandon Graham will have that debate during the week because I think when those snap counts come out, they're going to be a little bit spicy because I didn't see much Devonte Smith or Bryce Huff out there. I saw a hell of a lot of Brandon Graham. I thought Sweat looked the best that he'd looked. I thought Milton Williams looked good. I thought Jordan Davis was fine. Booker was fine as well. But Jalen Carter, man, I mean, I'm like the biggest Jalen Carter guy in the world. I think he might be a bit of an idiot, and I think he appears very immature. And I think he's got a lot of learning to do on this team. And I think he'll have weeks where he loses his head. I think he'll give dumb penalties. But he's the most talented defensive player in basically every game the Eagles play. And he just wrecks the game today. That was like old school defensive tackle, just fully taking over a game. I think on the rewatch, that's going to be a huge talking point this week, because I could already see those clips going viral this week of Jalen Carter just running past offensive lineman. Like, I think he is going to be a superstar. I still think he's going to be a superstar, and I'm maintaining it's all about what happens up in his head and not about his physical talent. Because if he can stay calm and like learn the position properly, the physical talent is rare. And I think there is a reason why he fell to 8, because the physical talent alone is like a top 2 pick in the draft. So if he plays like that every week, the Eagles defense is going to be hard to stop, because elite defensive tackles can totally change a defense. So yeah, defensive line absolutely balled out today. A massive credit for playing more 5-down fronts, but I also thought that the Saints sort of made it a little bit easier for them. So I'm still interested to see how they do it against a team that runs a lot of nickel. But we'll worry about that when it happens. For today, they are awesome.
Yeah, Brandon saying, build Brandon Graham a statue, still our best defensive end at 37 years old. Shane, any thoughts on what the 5-man fronts does for the Eagles and Jalen Carter and the rest of the defense?
Yeah, I was right there with Johnny saying the Eagles should have been in 5-man fronts last week to stop the run. This was a great situation to use it, because the Saints like to run 12 and 21 personnel. They don't put they put 3 receivers on the field at the lowest rate in the NFL. And like Johnny said, I thought they did us a great favor today, especially Taysom Hill's out, and he's one of those guys that's usually on the field. I would have put an additional receiver out there and tried to stretch the Eagles, but they made it easy for the Eagles to commit to the 5-man fronts. And they were walking Zach Bond down onto the edge a lot and then just dropping him out. And that's fine. You're still essentially getting him playing the same coverage responsibilities and things, but you don't allow free access to the second level in the run game. You get more one-on-one matchups for Jalen Carter. So I thought, it was a good adjustment by Fangio. It was an easy adjustment, though, because the Saints made that one easy. But, man, you've got to credit the defense today. The Saints have averaged 45.5 points a game and 405 yards per game. The Eagles' defense held them to 12 points and 219 yards. Like, the defense played incredible. Through 2 weeks, the Saints had they led the NFL in drop back EPA, and they led the NFL in rushing EPA. The Eagles held them to a negative 0.21 EPA per play. And they tackled well. That was a big concern. They haven't tackled well the first few weeks, but per NextGen Stats, the Eagles defense missed only 3 tackles today, which was a 94.7% tackle rate. In weeks 1 and 2, the Eagles converted only 81% of their tackles. So massive tip of the hat to everybody on the defense. Man, Quinyon Mitchell is going to get a pick 6 one of these weeks, and I'm going to say irrational things on Twitter because he had his hands on one last week. He had his hands on one this week. As we say, that's why he plays defense. I love watching the kid play, though. I thought it's just fun to watch. It was fun to watch the defense today for sure.
Yeah. Just watching the defense bail out brain dead decisions by the coaching staff was awesome. The big picture is the defensive line is back. Do you guys think we're going to see more 5-man fronts going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of have to, but I wonder if it's going to be more game specific. I think the best thing the Eagles did today was something that I asked them to do last week as well, and they did this week 1 really well, is that 5-man fronts doesn't have to be 5 defensive linemen or edge defenders. They put Zach Bourne as an edge today quite a few times, and who's the announcer who called the game today? The Panthers.
Greg Olsen?
No. Yeah, Greg Olsen's the best by a mile, like absolute best by a mile. If he could just call every Eagles game, I'd basically just come to the podcast and say what Greg Olsen says and sound really smart.
I also find it really annoying when Greg Olsen calls games because I'm like halfway through tweeting something and then he says it and I'm like, now everybody thinks I'm just retweeting Greg Olsen. But he's incredible. Go ahead.
Luckily we have receipts. So I did literally tweet last week and talk about it week 1 as well about how Zach Bourne dropping as an edge is brilliant. because basically you can create a 5-man front without actually playing a 5-man front. And what the Eagles did today that was really cool was they did it really last minute. Like you could see, like they're basically in a 4-man front, but then at very, very last second, Zach Bourne just like hovers over the tight end, and that's got to be a nightmare for a offensive coaching staff, because it's almost like they don't really know what the Eagles are going to do until a second before they snap the ball. And if you're trying to run gap scheme and you're trying to block a certain player and the lines are changing literally a second or 2 seconds before you snap the ball, it is rare to have a linebacker like Zach Bourne, who is basically an edge and an off-ball linebacker in one. And I think we'll talk about him in a second. But that gives you so much flexibility. Like, he is the absolute chess piece. So I think we have to see more 5-man fronts, but I don't think it will be as prominent as it was today, because I think teams are not going to be as heavy as the Saints were on a regular basis.
5-man fronts against 11 personnel is tremendously more difficult to pull off. So it was a perfect matchup for the Eagles to use it here. It'll be tougher against a team that wants to spread you out.
I think the biggest X factor so far for the Eagles, at least the last 2 games, Thomas Booker, Milton Williams. I mean, we all saw this breakout season by Milton Williams. And that's really nice to see. I want to see more of that. But what the hell do they do about Bryce Huff, Shane? Like, what is the plan going forward? Like Johnny said, we're going to see what the snap count look like in a little bit, but like, he clearly cannot be on the football field right now.
I mean, man, I watched Bryce Huff, and he's been a good pass rusher for 2 years. And so that doesn't just go away. I think there's an element of he's in a new scheme that's asking him to do different things, and an element of he's playing a lot more snaps, being asked to play the run first potentially. It's not ideal. This was the risk when you paid a guy that was a situational pass rusher, what you paid him, and tried to make him a full-time starter. There's a pathway that doesn't work out. So I would like to see you just get back to the basics with Bryce Huff, make him a pass rushing specialist, play him 20 to 25 snaps a game, and try to come along from there. If you have to split it up, play Nolan Smith on early downs because he's a good run defender, play Bryce Huff on pass rushing downs, and maybe between the two, you can get a serviceable 3-down player, which isn't ideal for a first-round pick and a $51 million free agent signing. But your best pathway to success with Zach Bond is get back to the roots of his success, which I think is limiting snaps and allowing him just to attack the passer.
I do think there are real flashes with this Eagles defense for reasons to be excited about. I do think this is a good defense once they start figuring out. That's why I want Cooper DeJean in for Avonte to help the run defense. But go ahead, Johnny.
I was going to say I hate being this guy, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm never ever like question guys' mentality when they get paid, but I watch too much like Bryce Huff film, as Shane did, to tell you this is who Bryce Huff is. This is not who he is. Like, I think it's too simplistic when people say limit his snaps. I think the Eagles limited his snaps today, and he's not the same player. Now, what I think maybe, and this is me just totally spitballing, is maybe the Eagles asked him to bulk up. Maybe the Eagles asked him to gain weight, because I don't think schematically, like, he's an edge defender. I know you can say Fangio's asking him to do other stuff. He's not dropping into coverage. Like, he's basically rushing the quarterback. Like, he is playing football. He's played football his whole life. He's rushed. I'm watching him just not be able to get past tackles. So I'm trying to figure out what on earth is going on, because you can't just blame Harry Roseman and say, like, oh, they drafted him to be an early down player, because he's not even being an early down player. He's not stopping the run. Like, even in obvious pass rush situations, I've watched way too much Bryce Huff, and the numbers are exceptionally good. He was an unbelievably good pass rusher. You don't just suddenly completely fall off the cliff. So I said it last week, but I think there's either 3 things. He's either hurt, or he's got the bag, as someone did comment, and I hate being that guy, but he's got the bag and he's not training 100%. And elite sports, you have to be 110% every week. And if you just drop 20% of like your attitude to your athleticism or your explosiveness, he seems like a good dude in interviews, but there's something not right. He's not said he's tried to gain weight. I've not heard that anywhere, but I don't really get it. Like, the guy can rush the quarterback and he has his whole career. And yeah, he looks a little bit useless at the moment. So I have no good solutions on Bryce Huff. I think what Shane said's right, but I think they might have done that today, and I still don't think they got anywhere. So I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know.
The Bryce Huff PFF stats are already out. 13 pass rushing snaps, 0 pressures, basically zeros across the board. That's fascinating.
And 13, I think. 13's nothing. You can't limit him any more than 13. Like that's a reasonable amount to limit him to. That's saying go 100% on every single snap.
I'm pretty sure he's fallen to the turf more than the pass rush snaps he got in today's game. Is there any chance they start to slowly titrate Jalen Hunts's snaps in that role?
It depends on how much they want to drop him, because I don't think Jalen Hunt has much of a pass rush plan, but he can certainly drop into coverage, which is something you're going to need if you try to major in 5 down fronts.
Yep. Let's roll on to Shane. Any thoughts, any other additional thoughts before we get into player of the game?
Darius Slay had a good game too. That pass breakup he had on Rashid Shaheed in the end zone. He knew what the Saints want to do with Shaheed. He's a big play threat. They've targeted him downfield all season. Quinyon Mitchell rolled the dice and got beat on the out and up early in the game. Throw is just a smidge behind by Carr. Quinyon Mitchell has really good makeup speed to get up there and break that pass up. Darius Slay later in the game, they tried the same thing, and this is the difference. This is the difference in a rookie and a vet. Darius Slay knows exactly what Rashid Shaheed is and what they're trying to do. He didn't even flinch. He's right on top of it and breaks that pass up in the end zone. So savvy play by Slay. I thought he played really good as well. And that's it. I'm good for defense now.
Jake Elliott.
Never missed a kick, as Ben Solak would say.
Johnny, any final thoughts before you get into player of the game?
Yeah, I wanted to just do the Zach Bourne thing again. I think he's awesome. I think last week was a really weird Zach Bourne game because I think Vic Fangio came out and confirmed he's never faced that before as a player. He's never faced cut blocks from an offensive guard every snap. And it was like his brain just malfunctioned. Every play, the guy was just charging at him and cutting him, and he didn't know what to do. But for that game, if you ignore that, because that was a weird game, he has looked incredibly good in 2 weeks. And again, like he was everywhere today. Like he had a couple of big stops. There was a stop on 4th or 3rd down earlier on, or was it the 4th down on Kamara? That was Zach Bourne as well. Like he's tough enough to play the run in big situations. He's light enough to play edge. Even when he got beat by Kamara on the wheel route, that is probably the worst position an edge defender can ever get in, because that was actually a good example of the Saints game planning well. They saw that Zach Bourne was at edge, but because he wasn't rushing the quarterback, they knew he had man coverage on Kamara, and they ran a wheel at him. And even then, with like the perfect play call, the perfect play against him, he still very nearly broke that up. Like, I think if he got his hand up a little bit higher, once he saw Kamara go to catch it, he may have broken it up. But that was like, and that's basically like the hardest thing you can do as an edge defender is cover Kamara on a wheel route. And he nearly did it. And then last thing, I think Shane hit the corner as well. So I'll very quickly talk about safeties. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is an absolute nutter. Like reading his quotes from the training, like he seems like he's just a complete and utter nutcase. Like I'm reading some of his stuff, screaming in the locker room. They ain't no contenders, they're pretenders, because they have Derek Carr at quarterback, and it's like he just doesn't care. He's the kind of guy that you hate if he's on another team. When he plays for you, you sort of love him, even though he sort of has some questionable decisions. And then Reed Blankenship's had 2 interceptions this year. They've probably won the Eagles 2 games or contributed to 2 games, and they're not easy picks. Like diving forward in front of a receiver is actually a skill, and it's a skill that a lot of defensive backs don't have. The ball bounces off the ground, they drop it. Like a really, really good play. I didn't think Blankenship did a lot today, but sometimes with safeties, that's not a bad thing if you don't see them very much. But that's a huge play. Like it's an awful throw, but I think actually that's not as easy of a catch as we assume. I think when you're diving towards the football, it's very easy for it to just sneak through you and hit the ground. So, yeah, massive shout out to those 2 guys and the defense in general, they were just awesome today.
I also want to give out a shout out to Nakobe Dean. Had 5 run stops. That ties a career high for him in a game. And no missed tackles this week. No missed tackles last week. We've talked a lot about missed tackles for the Eagles. He's only got 1 missed tackle on the season. So if you believe PFF, take it for what it's worth. So let's roll on to player of the game for the Eagles. Player of the game for the Birds. Johnny, it's your first one, man. You got to lead us off. Who is your player of the game?
Jalen Carter. I don't think he had the wow snap numbers in terms of sack stuff, but I think he made in this game, and I think on the rewatch there's going to be some great tweets coming out this week because I think he had some plays where he was like freakishly good. So yeah, I'm going to go Jalen Carr.
And of all Shane, how many times have I predicted Jalen Carter to be my player of the game, and the 1 week I don't pick him, he has a game. Shane,
so it turns out this was your fault all along. Is that what you're saying?
I guess I can't pick Jalen Carter the rest of the season.
It's like the reverse curse thing. I've picked the wrong result in all three of my predictions so far this year. I picked the Packers week 1. I picked the Eagles week 2. I picked the Saints week 3. I will be picking the Buccaneers next week on our preview show just to make sure the Eagles win. But I can't believe that Johnny didn't pick Saquon Barkley. And so I feel like I have to represent our podcast well by picking Saquon Barkley. So we've at least covered that base. But man, we talked about it earlier, 17 carries, 147 yards, breaks the game open with the first touchdown, seals the game with the second one. Saquon Barkley gets it for me for player of the game.
All right. I thought you were going to go Dallas Goedert for sure.
I left him for you.
Yeah, I'll take the layup.
You got to take him because the chat's mad. So you got to take Dallas Goedert, please.
See, here's what chat needs to understand is that we don't repeat players. And so there's an amount when someone has an obviously good game, there's an amount of sticking the host with the obvious one. So you get to talk about somebody else. So that's what's going on here. We all think Goddard was great.
Shane, you said I was brave. You're now explaining how podcasts work to the lovely listeners.
I'm just saying.
You said I was brave at the start, and you're also referring to them as one body in the name of chat. There are hopefully quite a few people there listening that I very much respect and would never band their name together as one entity.
Obviously, it's Dallas Goedert. I mean, 10 catches, 11 targets, 170 yards. It got to the point, Johnny, I don't know if you watched like post-game last week, but we were legitimately questioning how good this guy was. Like, we were like, is this guy not who we thought he was? And he delivered. Shane, you remember that? Like, I could not understand for the life of me why even Jaylen Herz between the hashes, 11 for 11 last week. Yay. He only had 4 catches for like some yards. So finally, great to see him deliver that Joe Jaravicious moment, him with the crosser running forever for 60 plus yards. That is a play that I will remember for this. And I can't wait to rewatch it and create that all 22. Let's roll into our, Eagles team grades for the day. All right, this is going to be interesting. Shane, how would you grade today's performance?
And this is where I really wish I could split it into offense and defense, but I'll give it like a B for today. The offense is an A+. The game management somewhere around a D-. The offense is somewhere in that C-ish range. So all in all, somehow that equates to a B.
A B for Shane. Johnny, how would you grade this?
Shane would want me to change my answer to appease the chat, but I have my things written down and I'm not going to change. So I also gave it a B. I think it's easy to be negative, but the Eagles did beat a Saints team who have not had a drive this year where they haven't scored. So that's not an easy place to go and win. So I think I would go higher if Nick Sirianni wasn't a slight idiot. Then it would be a B+ or an A-. But if I see that fake tush push thing again and 4th and 1, my brain may explode. So the B stops it from rising to an A-.
I'm in that like C+, B- range. Maybe I'll throw it to a B. Just to get out of New Orleans with the W is massive. With everything that the Eagles had to deal with, from the coaching to the injuries to some bad decision making. Yeah, I'll give it a B. I'll give it a B. Player talent won over coaching. Somewhere Nick Sirianni should be giving keys to cars, vehicles to every single player on that defense for bailing him out on this one. Quentin says an A-. We have a C+, we have a B, we have an S for stressful. Let's get into our favorite segment of the show, and that is the Eagles game in 3 words or less. Shane, lead us off, man.
All right. Each and every week at the end of the game, we put up on the Eagles Pinpool Twitter account your request for your 3-word reaction. So make sure you go over there and drop your comments after each game. You can drop them in the chat here and we'll tell you some of our favorites. I've got a few of my favorite. There's a lot of them this week. So let's run through some here. We've got Schmelke says concerned about injuries. Obviously a good one with all the guys going down in this game. We've got Anthony says Jaylen was clutch. Winston says need healthy stars. Now, this one I thought was really good from Andrew, but unfortunately he's cheating because he used more than 3 words. So I can't read this on the air, but if he had somehow said in 3 words that the win bought time for Moore and Fangio to just keep rowing the boat with minor tweaks and not drift out of their comfort zones to keep the season from getting away. Basically, Eagles can fake it till they make it. Next game losing decision needs to be Sirianni's last. If he had somehow summarized that in 3 words, I could have put it on the air, but he didn't. So that's cheating. That one's out of here. We've got Derek says, take the points. I loved this one from Nathaniel. Defense, good. Offense, question mark. That's a creative way to sneak in an extra character there and not violate 3 words. We've got Bryce Panders says Saquon saved us. Kevin says sigh of relief. Late for dinner, which is a great Twitter name, says coaching notwithstanding. Philly Axe says win despite Nick. Then we've got the 3 words fire, Siri, Ani, creative. A promote Kellen Moore. And then my personal favorite from X Sparrow says, so who dat? So there you guys have it. Your guys' 3 words reactions to the game. We've got a Goedert Cook from Travis in the YouTube chat. Nick Oprah Sirianni from Cam Crawford in the chat. Tarmac Nick Sirianni. Defense doesn't suck. Derek Carr's back. And Graham don't retire from Q. So a lot of great 3 words from you guys in this one. Quentin, you can't make your 3 words. Quentin was right. That doesn't work. So for, I guess, my 3-word reaction, I would just say, please get healthy. Like, please get healthy. The Eagles are amassing injuries. They're stacking injuries at wide receiver, at the offensive line. Got to get healthy. You don't like the week 5 bye week when the schedule releases, but it may hit at a really good time for the Eagles. So, Dibes, what's your 3-word reaction?
I think fly Eagles fly. Sirianni still sucks. I'll say my 3 words after this one will be, what's up, Belichick?
Oh, that's gross. My new 3 words is kill me now. Johnny, what do you have? What is your 3-word reaction? Dibes has set a really low bar, so.
Yeah, I think I might change mine to anything about that, but I won't. The thing I wrote down was faith in coordinators. I still feel pretty good about Kellen Moore, and this was a great Vic Fangio game. So, yeah, I will go with a shout-out to the 2 big coordinators on this team because they may have saved the head coach from a very embarrassing defeat.
I got to go to a comment here from Kawan on YouTube. It says, grading on the facial hair scale, I give the offense a Dibes, the defense a Johnny Page, and the overall team a Shane. So I guess I'm in the middle here. So Dibes, you should be offended by this. I guess I'm okay with it.
I feel attacked.
There's been a couple of comments about my facial hair in the chat, which is my self-esteem has gone through the roof. So I might have to do the post-game shows more often.
I like this one.
We might have you for like a month straight with all the 1 o'clock games now, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap it up, guys. Shane, final thoughts on this one. Plugs. Time is yours. Let's head home after the W.
All right. Yeah. I mean, hey, a win's a win on a short week on the road at a really difficult place to play against a super hot opponent. Nonetheless, the Cowboys are getting embarrassed right now by the Ravens. So all is well on this Sunday. Let's get healthy and let's get another win against Tampa next weekend.
Well, anything you want to plug, man? Final thoughts? I mean,
just be sure you're following. There's 1,900 of you guys listening live, and we don't get that many downloads per show on the Eagles Pin Pull Network. So if you enjoy the post game, go click the subscribe button over there. The post game show goes out there. We've got 5 other long form shows a week and a daily quick hitter first thing in the morning. So go click subscribe. Help us out over there. You can follow us on Twitter at Eagles Pin Pull, and I'm on Twitter at Shane Half NFL.
What about you, Johnny? First one in the books, man. First of many.
Yeah, first of many, hopefully. Yeah, I've done a few for BGM the last few years, but nothing sort of consistent. Yeah, I won't bother plugging anything. I think people know where I am. If you're listening to me on here, just follow the Twitter basically, and you'll find everything, the clips, etc. I'll leave you with 2 quick thoughts. Firstly, I think I'll do negative first. Actually, I'll do negative first. I think Cameron Crawford has been mentioning this a few times in the chat. I assume he's correct because obviously I've not checked Twitter, but apparently Sirianni has taken credit, or not credit, the opposite. But he's come out saying he called the 4th and 1 play, not Kellen Moore. In which case, that seems very interesting to have an offensive coordinator who calls the plays, but then the head coach steps in on the 4th and 1. So I feel like, I don't know if that's true. I've not seen it, not doubting Cameron here, but I've not seen anything else on Twitter. But if that is true, that's going to be a story this week. Because that is sort of insane if the head coach just steps in, not just telling you you're going for it, but also saying, I want you to run this play. That's not going to last. If there's anything I know about NFL coaches, they hate being told what to do. And if you're an offensive coordinator and you're told you're calling plays, like you're calling plays. And if not, you're out of there. So that might be an interesting story. But I'll finish positively and just say I think it's sort of underestimated because of how frustrating this game was, how big of a win this was. I think going 1-2 would not have been good. And I think the Eagles season has a lot more positivity now because I think that's a really big win against a really good New Orleans Saints team who have basically killed everyone else so far. So there you go.
Yeah. By the way, guys, if you aren't following Johnny Page 9 on X, I don't know what you're doing. His all 22 videos and so forth. And so is Shane, of course. You guys crush it. Guys, make sure you go check that out. Guys, we will be back tomorrow night for a Monday edition of Birds of the Round Table. We typically do Tuesday nights at 8, but there's a lot of schedule adjustments, so we're going to make it tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We'll see you then. He is Shane Half NFL on X. That is Johnny Page 9 on X. Shane, Johnny, for myself, stay awesome, everyone.